Hi, everyone. The deck we'll be looking at today is called An Illustrated Tarot by John Hosack. It's a pretty obscure deck that I found on Instagram a year or two ago, during the height of my tarot spending problem. In an attempt to curb my spending a little, I used to force myself to not click on that Add to Cart button right away. Instead, I'll put it on my wish list, think about it for a few weeks, and during that time, I try to convince myself out of it. With this deck, however, there was absolutely no hesitation. It was one of those decks that I knew I needed after seeing just one posting about it. Since my purchase, I've made a few postings of this deck, and almost every time someone would inquire about it. So I thought it might be worth dedicating a video review to it. In my humble opinion, this is a gorgeous deck and definitely deserves more attention and love than it currently receives. Let me walk you through it and see if you agree. Before we dive into the cards, I think it's worth showcasing the box it comes in. This is a beautiful and sturdy one-piece magnetic flip box. On the first three surfaces, there's a pyramid with these obscure drawings. I've literally studied these with a magnifying glass, and I still can't tell you what they are. Some of these kind of look like tents. For some reason, this image at the bottom here feels like a depiction of hell to me. And then this one in the corner looks like a woman sitting on a chair with a blanket over her lap. Now, we open the box all the way and see that at the bottom of this pyramid, there's a man looking up at it. Presumably, he's thinking the exact same thing as I am. What the heck am I even looking at? When we flip the box around, we see that the inside cover has a much more comprehensible image. There's a man with what looks like a lamppost before him. I don't know if this is intentional, but the post reminds me of the hermit's staff. Overall, I really like the color palette with the black, white, and the dull blue. I also really like the art style. This etching in particular reminds me of illustrations found in those special editions of classic novels. I can totally see this image as a scene from one of those classic Gothic stories like Wuthering Heights or Frankenstein. Thus far, the majority of my video reviews on this channel don't include a full flip through. Their primary focus is to speak about the unique qualities of the decks being reviewed. For this review, however, I will flip through the entire deck because the artwork is the unique feature. I'm tempted to say that is also because the cards speak for themselves, but as you'll see in a bit, this statement isn't entirely true. And now, without further ado, here we go. The first thing you'll notice is that the eerie vibe of the box design carries right over into the cards themselves. There's a sense of calmness to these people, but not serenity. It's like they're emotionally and spiritually repressed, like they are residents of the brave new world where original thought is a crime and they've learned to self censor. Another thing I found is that there's an atmosphere of absurdity to this deck, but not in a comical way. The people appear gawky, like they don't know what to do with themselves. In fact, when I finished flipping through this deck for the very first time, I remember thinking to myself, this is one of the most joyless decks that I've ever seen. In terms of tarot tradition, I really can't tell you which style this deck belongs to. Some of these images are vaguely Rider-Waite-Smith, but for the most part, it seems like these cards just do their own thing and don't follow any rules or norms. Quite frankly, I have no idea what many of these cards mean. Most of them are too descriptive to be read like a pip deck, but not descriptive enough to rely on the images alone. So, what kind of reading experience does this lead to? Because this deck doesn't come with a guidebook, readings with these cards can get pretty frustrating at times. Having that said, I still enjoy working with this deck. I've actually stopped asking it particular questions. Instead, I pull it out when I'm in a very specific mood, where I don't want to talk and I don't want company. But at the same time, I kinda do. When I'm in one of those moods, I pull out this deck and just pick a few cards and look at them. Most of the time, they don't really tell me anything logical, but they do help ease that sense of restlessness or melancholy or whatever I'm feeling at the time that I need help dealing with. It might seem strange how this deck can be calming because it feels so depressing and lonely, but I actually find it comforting because of that. It's not that it makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside, but it does make me feel like it's okay to be sad. I know I'm probably not doing this deck any favors by talking about how depressing it feels and how hard it is to interpret the cards. But I do really like this deck, and I'm reviewing it because I want others to see the beauty in it as well. Admittedly, it's not for everybody. And what I've just described is probably a very personal experience that no one else will empathize with. But I wanted to share that because that's why I find it beautiful. And to be completely honest, another reason why I wanted to share this deck with everyone is because I'm curious to know what others think about this deck. For those who own a copy, how do you use this deck? For those who are seeing it for the first time here, what are your thoughts? How does it make you feel? Before I sign off, I do want to acknowledge that I didn't have much useful information for you in this review. But in place of useful information, here's something that I found to be rather intriguing about this deck. As you may recall, I started this video by showing the box it came in, and I'll show it again now because I want to bring your attention to the fact that this box has absolutely no writing on it whatsoever. And as I mentioned earlier, there's also no guidebook. What this means is that the name of the deck and the artist are nowhere to be found. The next thing that I want to point out is that, as far as I'm aware, this deck is only sold on micplayingcards.com, which is a great site for creators because it allows anyone to print their own deck, but is a notoriously awful site for consumers. Their marketplace doesn't market anything. If anything, it does almost everything possible to discourage casual browsing. You can't find anything on there unless you already know what you're looking for. Lastly, I've scoured the entire internet and can't find anything about this artist. On top of that, the name of this deck is an illustrated tarot, which can pretty much describe any tarot deck. All of this combined makes me think that this deck doesn't actually want to be found. Now, I don't know if anyone else finds this interesting, but I think it gives this deck this sexy kind of mystery and makes me drawn to it even more. If anyone knows anything about this deck or the creator, please leave a comment and let me know. And while you're at it, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to this channel for more tarot related content. Thank you very much for stopping by, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.